What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for coming back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the remake of Child's Play. So when this movie was announced, I gotta be honest, I was not very excited for it. I was kind of worried about how this movie would turn out. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I love the Child's Play movies. I love Chucky, and even though a lot of those movies are not technically good from a narrative standpoint and from a lot of other standpoints, they're films that are essentially guilty pleasures for me, and that franchise for me is top-notch B-rate horror at its best for me. I just have such a great time watching it. That's all really thanks to the character of Chucky, voiced by Brad Dourif. I love those films, I love those characters, and I love that character specifically because of how ridiculous and how silly he is, and how ridiculous and silly the premise is. They're films that I just have a good time with. Like I said, they're essentially guilty pleasures. Ooh, I'm gonna take this off because now it's hot. Now, the Child's Play remake, yeah, you know, first of all, I'm kind of ashamed that it took me this long to watch the movie. I really wanted to see it in theaters, and I'm ashamed as a Chucky fan that it took me this long to see it, but it's just one of those movies that time-wise, it just never worked out for me when it was out in theaters, and I just never got a chance to go check it out in theaters. So now I own it on Blu-ray. I finally got a chance to check it out, and yeah, what I'll say right out of the gate is I enjoyed the film. I thought it was cool. I thought it was all right. I had a good time with it. It kind of sits, I would say, somewhere in the middle of the road as far as my ranking of the whole series as a whole. There's definitely worse movies in the Chucky franchise. Obviously, this is a reboot and has nothing to do with the other films. But yeah, I don't think it's the worst Chucky film, and I don't think it's the best Chucky film, but I did like it. Now, one of the things that I loved about this film the most is how different they made it from the original. Now, they take the same basic premise of Andy, his mom, and Chucky, and the idea of this doll that's gonna kill this kid and kill everybody else. And yeah, this doll that comes to life and kills people with the same set of characters from the original film. That same basic premise is here. Now, in the original Child's Play, Brad Dourif's character, Charles Lee Ray, who's a serial killer, right before he dies, ends up transferring his soul into the Chucky doll, the good guy doll. And yeah, he essentially just transfers his soul in via voodoo. And so there's a supernatural element to that story and to that version of Chucky. And when I heard, based on the previews and everything that we're talking about, that they were going to eliminate that element of the film and that it was going to be more of like an AI kind of Chucky, I was just so turned off by the idea. I just didn't understand why they were going to do that. And now actually seeing the movie, I'm really happy that they did that, because I feel like they did a great job of differentiating themselves from the other films. I think if you're going to make a remake, you got to make it different. There's no point of remaking a franchise, especially like a big franchise like this when it comes to Chucky, or just at least the original film. You know, it's definitely a slasher classic, and so to remake that film, you got to do something different. If not, why are you even doing it? What's the point? They did do something different. The film is very different from the original film. It takes that same basic premise, and there are a lot of things that are very similar, which of course you're gonna get out of a remake of this franchise. But I love the fact that they took out that voodoo element, because this movie is really able to stand on its own and do something different. I will always prefer Brad Dourif's Chucky, and without a doubt, it's way better just as far as the character design, the way it looks, the puppet, all that jazz, the voice, the laugh, everything that Brad Dourif and Don Mancini and everybody who's involved in those films has done with that version of Chucky. It's just great for me. I just love the practical effects, and I just love what they did with that version of the character. And I do like Mark Hamill's version of Chucky here. I did enjoy his voice. However, I think Mark Hamill was kind of underutilized. I feel like if you're gonna cast an actor like Mark Hamill and you're not gonna have him do some sort of laugh or something, not that I necessarily expected them to replicate the Joker, but Chucky's laugh is synonymous with Chucky, and in this film he really doesn't have a laugh, and when he does laugh, it kind of sounds like Winnie the Pooh, and I feel like they underutilized Mark Hamill. I enjoy him as an actor. Obviously, if you've been watching this channel, you know I love Star Wars. I love Mark Hamill. So I was super excited to see what he would bring to the role, and I love what he does with the Joker. And I thought that they would at least have him do some sort of laugh, something that felt like a different version of Chucky. And in this film, he's got more of a subtle, kind of calm voice. You know, he has his little moments where he's a little funnier and a little more loud, but for the most part, he really is kind of a very subtle sounding character. It just sounds like Mark Hamill just doing a nice kind of chill voice, and I just kind of felt like that's not what I wanted out of this movie, and it's not the Chucky I was hoping to see. So like I mentioned, in this movie, he is not having anything to do with voodoo. He is not Charles Lee Ray inside of the body of a doll. And in this one, he's just an AI doll that they sell in stores that, in this case, was programmed to have no behavioral control, essentially. So he, in this film, is similar to what they kind of like sell on the original Good Guy doll in the original film, which was that you have this doll that's gonna be your kid's best friend. And in this one, he's a little AI doll that can walk around with you and talk to you, so he actually is more physically involved in what's going on. In the original film, anytime Andy or anybody would say it was Chucky, Chucky would just pull a Toy Story and just lay there flat, and everybody would be like, it's just a doll, man, like what's wrong with you? And then that was kind of the whole deception around the character of Chucky, is that he was able to then get up afterwards when somebody would leave and do whatever he wanted. Whereas in this film, they completely eliminate that because the character actually does walk around. He is sentient, he is able to communicate with people, and they just kind of know him to be this toy, this doll that can do this. So it eliminates the ability of him just being able to just go Toy Story mode. But then it also has characters just kind of feel like that's normal, like that's just what the doll does, that's what these characters does. So it's just like, oh no, the doll's fine, look, he's just chilling over there, and he may like respond to you or say something or look around, and you think, and everybody thinks, oh, you know, the doll's moving, he's doing his own thing, but the doll didn't kill those people. And so I like that, I like that they flipped that on its head. And one thing that I really enjoyed about it is, as I was saying about the programming, in this one, he really wants to be Andy's best friend. And the doll's imprint on people, they literally scan the face of the person that they're with, and they become completely connected to him. And since this one, his programming is all jacked up, he becomes an obsessive friend for the character of Andy. And I really like that. I thought that they made it really different. I thought that when you look back at the originals and have the concept of, you know, Chucky being this serial killer inside of this doll who wants to get this kid, because his whole goal after getting inside the doll is to get the first person who sees him or that he revealed himself as when it comes to the doll and be able to transfer his soul into their human body so he can get out of the doll. And in this movie, that's not the case at all, and I love that. I like the fact that they changed it up entirely, and in this case, the doll really just wants to be Andy's best friend, and it's this addictive kind of friend. It's this over-the-top kind of jealous friend, and so you bring a whole nother layer to Chucky this time that's completely different from the other ones. And whether or not I love this film, I do really appreciate the fact that they thought of something very different with a very similar premise. Now, my biggest issues with this film were just the fact that I felt like there wasn't a really great balance of horror and comedy. In the original film, there is a little bit of comedy sprinkled in there, but for the most part, it's a slasher. It's just your straight up just slasher horror film with a little bit of comedy mixed in. And the second and third film kind of follow that formula with just a little bit more comedy. And then it's the fourth film and beyond that just does a full blend of comedy and horror, and it's a lot more of a comedy with horror elements being more of the imagery and the grotesque dialogue and a lot of the violence and the kills, but it doesn't really have that horror element like it's trying to be scary. Whereas in this film, at times it's trying to be serious and grounded and scary, and then other times it's trying to be so goofy, and the tone just feels like it shifts throughout the film, and that balance just didn't work for me the whole time. Now, if you've seen my reviews for the other films, I'm a lot more forgiving of those films, but again, I think that those films, for me, know what they are. They're completely ridiculous and silly. They know what they are, even if they're not good. And even in those reviews, I talked about how like the narratives were, in most cases, pretty terrible, but it's the character of Chucky that kept it entertaining. And in this film, Chucky was entertaining, but he was not nearly as charismatic as in the original film. You know, at one point you kind of feel for him because he is this doll who's just trying to be Andy's friend, and they kind of have a bond, and I really enjoyed that in the early part of the film. But as time went on and Chucky starts to get a little more creepy, I was getting excited for that. But a lot of it was just him kind of just subtly saying things, or just, you know, maybe taking a situation a little too far. Because he felt like a little kid who was learning, except that it just felt like he was learning all the wrong things, and everything that could go wrong was really what he was learning. And I just felt like the character of Chucky never had that charisma that Brad Dourif's version of the character had. That just over-the-topness. It was a real person inside of there that was just sick to the head and this crazy serial killer. And this one, he's just kind of a robot. So he talks like a robot, he does things like a robot, and he just feels like a kid who's slowly learning things, who eventually just snaps because he's jealous and he just wants the attention of this boy. And it becomes one of these things where it's like, if you can't be my friend, well then nobody can be your friend, kind of thing. So that's the basic premise of the film, and really what made it interesting for me was how different they made the character of Chucky. I did really appreciate that. I just wish they would have given him a little bit more charisma and made him the focal point like the other Chucky films did. I like the actor who plays Andy in this film. I think he's way better than the actor who played Andy in the original films. I think he's a better actor. I really enjoyed him. They made him a little bit older in this film. Aubrey Plaza as the mom was okay. Like, she gives a good performance, but I feel like her character kind of sucked. Like, in the original film, even though the mom's a little stupid and she's not paying attention to her son, you know, she's not a bad character. She's not a bad person. And in this one, Aubrey Plaza kind of felt like not necessarily the best mom. She didn't really necessarily feel like she was there for her kid. At the beginning of the movie, they kind of talk about how the fact that they just moved to where they are. It's supposed to be like a new start for them. And literally at one point, she goes, okay, well, you don't have to unpack any of your boxes or anything like that tonight if you go out there and go make friends with those kids. And she points at two kids outside while they're standing in their apartment complex, like looking down on these kids that are in the middle of a parking lot. It's raining, and they're standing next to a wall of graffiti. And it just made me think, what mom is gonna be like, yeah, you know what, you don't have to unpack tonight. Just go try to make friends out in the middle of the night in the rain next to that wall of graffiti that those two random teenagers are standing next to. What? like, it just made no sense to me, you know, and there was little things like that throughout the film that just didn't work for me. There were certain things, like I said, tonally, that just didn't work for me, because there's times where the film is really trying to be serious, and there's times where it's just really goofy. There's a whole segment of the film that has to do with a watermelon and a face, and I won't really get any deeper than that, but yeah, you know, I just felt like there was some stuff that was just super ridiculous, and it felt kind of ridiculous, like the original film's kind of ridiculous, but then they were trying to bring in this more modern horror sense to it, and I just felt like sometimes the tones were clashing. However, look, I did enjoy the film. I had a good time with it. I will rewatch it. I am happy to have it in my collection. It's not the worst Chucky film by a landslide. I just wish that the character of Chucky, the part that I love the most out of all the other films, even if they're terrible, I just wish that he would have had a little bit more meat and potatoes to his character, but I did enjoy the differences that they did with him. I just feel like they underutilized Mark Hamill. Like, you have Mark Hamill, come on, you have Mark fucking Hamill. Like, the guy can do incredible voices, and he feels subdued throughout the entire movie, and that's just something that kind of bothered me. And I just didn't like a lot of the other side characters. There's some other teenage characters in the film that just kind of felt like I just didn't really like the humor that they brought to the story or their role in the film on an overall level. But on an overall level, I did enjoy it. It's not my favorite. There's definitely obviously things I have gripes with, and I think that just comes from my passion and love for the franchise. They leave it open for a sequel. Don't really want one. If they make one, I'll watch it. But I'm kind of really excited for the fact that they're going to be continuing Don Mancini's Chucky franchise with Brad Dourif as Chucky via a TV show on Sci-Fi. That got me really excited when I heard about that, so I'm really looking forward to that show. I just feel like this movie could have been a lot better, but I did enjoy it for what it was. I just feel like a lot of the characters were just, you know, unlikable, but I did like Andy, so I think, you know, when you have at least your main character be likable, you know, at least when it comes to horror, that's at least an element that I can definitely say I really enjoyed. And yeah, you know, I wish that it was a little bit stronger, but I did enjoy it. I think that there was just some story decisions that didn't work for me, but I enjoyed the kills. I enjoyed the way it looked. I think it's the best shot Child's Play movie. I think it's the best shot Chucky movie. I think it has some really great elements. But I think one of the other things that I just didn't mention, and this will be the last thing I say, is that the character design on Chucky just feels, it almost feels like older. Like, it feels like dated. Like, they were going for like kind of that off-putting, weird, robotic look to him, right? But when you look at the old Chucky movies, like, man, the animatronics on that character were so good, especially as he became a little bit more human and his pupils changed and his hairline changed and all that kind of stuff. I love that about those other films, and in this film, the animatronic just looked so wonky, and his facial design just didn't work for me. Like, they went with something really different, but yeah, like, I couldn't help but feel the entire movie that his face just looked weird to me, and it just didn't feel like the modern, different look to Chucky that I was hoping for, you know. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just nitpicking. Maybe I'm just complaining too much. But you guys, let me know. Let me know down below. Did you like this movie? Did you love this movie? Was this your first introduction to Chucky? And are you a big fan of the original franchise? Definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. So leave those comments down below. Hit that like button. Like I said, though I have a lot of criticisms, I did enjoy the movie. I definitely lean more towards the positive side, and I really did have a good time watching every scene that had Chucky in it. So leave those thoughts down below, guys. It's getting really hot in here right now. I should not have worn this jacket. My face is getting really red because I've been talking a lot, and it's really hot in here. I'll see all of you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.